You're listening to Shalom Greater Raleigh, a production of the Jewish Federation of Greater Raleigh. I'm your host, B.J. Davis. Welcome to the second episode of Shalom Greater Raleigh. In this episode, we'll focus on the theme of social fabric and how the Federation is reaching out and finding ways to weave together a Jewish community that is diverse, vibrant, and engaged. We'll begin our conversation with Mindy Lawton. Mindy is the Federation's Senior Director of Engagement. She's tasked with overseeing and managing all programs designed to engage residents and provide ways for residents to find their way into and become part of the Greater Raleigh Jewish community. I'm here with Mindy Lawton from the Jewish Federation of Greater Raleigh. Mindy, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, your job title is Senior Engagement Manager?
Senior Director of Engagement.
Senior Director of Engagement. What does that mean?
So it's a new position at Federation, and with the new focus of engagement, it will oversee the other areas of engagement, which are broken out to family, adults, and older adult populations. My role is to look over all of them and over our focus areas and make sure that we provide engagement opportunities in every one of those boxes.
I think people will ask, well, what is engagement? I mean, when you mention engagement, what are you talking about?
So we used to focus on programs. The way I look at it, it's having a speaker or having an event and people attend for a certain purpose. And what we're finding is that people really just want to engage. And to me, there's less emphasis on the purpose of the gathering and more the fact that Jewish people are just gathering together. And that is what I think is the main difference between programming and engagement.
Is there also some sort of strategy in terms of after that engagement? In other words, once you bring people together, how to maybe encourage new friendships or new relationships or people continuing that process?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the ultimate goal. So we are now also looking, when we do gather people together, what's the purpose of the gathering and what's the next move for these people to become engaged either further with us or with each other or with one of our partner organizations. To quote something that Gather Inc. out of DC, who created this process, says, they say that the Jewish world doesn't need more programs, they need more people to go with. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do.
So let's back up a little bit. And I'm curious what brought you to the Raleigh area?
The weather. I am born and bred New York. I never had any plans to move out of New York. I met my husband in college, and with us both being from up north, North Carolina was the first place that he could take his coat off in the middle of winter and be comfortable. So when we got married, I agreed to move here for 3 years, and that was 32 years ago.
Well, that's a pretty good run.
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you been involved with the Federation? Were you involved in the Federation in some capacity before you came on the staff?
So my children went to camp here, but they did swim team at the JCC. But other than that, I was not involved in Federation. I was very involved with my temple, the Temple Beth Or. And then about 5 years ago, the then director of the JCC asked me to sit on the JCC board. And I looked around at what he had to offer, and I told him, I was like, I am a 50-year-old Jewish woman. I hang out all day with other 50-year-old Jewish women, and you have nothing here for me. And so he said, build me something. And he offered me a job for 5 hours a week to bring in that population. And I'm just a community builder. That's my passion. So I took it.
What's your personal philosophy in terms of community building? In terms of what do you bring from yourself into the job that you had and into the job that you have now?
I think everyone's connected somehow. You may look at someone and say, I have nothing in common with that person. But really, if you dig deep, I think we all have something in common with other people. And I just think the world's a better place when we all really feel those connections with one another.
And since you've been here for over 30 years. What changes have you seen in the Jewish community? And would you say that people are connecting or connect differently now than they used to?
Yeah, so the changes I've seen really stuck out with me when I saw the list that was put together at all the Hanukkah happenings around town here. When my children were young, I remember there were about 8 of us standing around Crabtree Mall watching the rabbi light a menorah. And now when I couldn't make it to all of the events. And I don't think even, young families couldn't make it to every event that was going on. It was just incredible. So that's mainly the growth I've seen.
So you earlier mentioned about this new engagement strategy, and exactly what are you doing differently now as opposed to earlier? Now, you mentioned it's less of an emphasis on programming and more of an emphasis on engagement. But again, in terms of planning for this new strategy, kind of what goes behind that?
So in the past, sometimes when a program idea would come to us, we'd say, what does this have to do with Judaism? Why would this program fall under us? For instance, would be a Taco Tuesday. Like, I don't see why would we put that on? But really, again, it's so that Jewish people can be in the same room with other Jewish people. And oddly enough, at that event, I had one woman attend who had no connection with the Jewish community, has lived here for many years. And she said, I feel more at home here than I have with people I've known for 10 years. So there's that other different connection when you're among your own people.
And your story about this woman at this event brings up another question. Do you have a favorite story about how people have connected together through the Federation, or how you have even been involved in that process of bringing people together?
So the one that's just blowing me away right now is we had a little gathering in Clayton, North Carolina, which up until a few years ago had Welcome to Johnson County, home of the KKK. So there was a Jewish woman I knew who knew maybe one or two other Jewish women in the area. So we put a post out saying we're going to Clayton. I asked this woman to suggest a bakery. So we put the call out. We had 6 people from Wendell and Clayton, and we met in this bakery. It was lovely to get to know these people. 3 of these people I had never were involved with anything in Federation before. Some of the people had known each other. Some of the people had never met before. But so many wonderful things came of it. So for one is the bakery owner came over and thanked us for being there, which started a conversation from the local women who said, do you offer challah? His response was he came from New Jersey. He knows how to make challah and macaroons and babka, hamantashen, but he just doesn't know when. So if one of them wanted to work with him and tell him when to make it, he would be happy to make it. So right there, we got the community involved. We posted a photo afterwards saying, thanking the bakery and the people who attended. And we got a comment on our post just saying, what? There are other Jews in Clayton? I want to meet you. So right there. And then a few weeks later, we had another event and I met 2 people from Garner. It's very close to Clayton. And they have a very small Jewish community also. And when I mentioned the Clayton community, now the 2 of those communities are gathering together, looking for opportunities to get together. So it's exploding. And this was just one small place where we didn't really even know if we had anyone.
I know that at one time, or maybe you could tell me, at one time, did the Federation have some kind of like directory to the Jewish community where people could find one another? So if people want to find people in their community, how would they go about doing that?
Well, unfortunately, in today's world, we have to be careful what we post and who we post. So if there was that directory in the past, I know there's been talk about it now. If there was that directory in the past, I don't really see it happening now. The way we do it more is there are a bunch of Jewish Facebook groups. And that's where that community, last I looked, and it's been a while since I looked, there were over 2,000 members in each of the few different local Jewish Facebook groups.
But if someone, say, wasn't familiar with Facebook and wanted to get involved with a community, say in Clayton or Garner or some other place, who would they contact to get tied in?
So part of it is word of mouth, but also on the Jewish Federation's website, we have, are you new to the community? And by that, it's, are you new physically to this area, or are you new just wanting to get involved in our community? And then we do an intake, and based on that conversation, we connect that person with other people that may have similar ideas or interests.
That's great. So what new groups are you hoping to connect with within the Jewish community?
So first of all, we're trying to better connect with our community partners, the congregations, the Voice for Israel, the existing Jewish organizations that are there, and figure out how we can best support each other. I think in the past, there's been a belief that there are limited resources, volunteers, and money and programs that people will attend. I don't really believe that. And I don't think that just because someone spends some of their resources with one organization, they are less likely to spend it in another. Again, time, resources. And I just feel like as the Federation, we should be, and we are, lifting up every Jewish organization in the area. And that's how it starts. The next step would be bringing in new opportunities for Jewish engagement. So once we do this, it's kind of like listing out everything that's currently available and where are the holes. And one that's been coming up recently is Jewish involvement in the environment. I've gotten it from a few different places. So I'm not sure that it would actually be a Federation-sponsored event, or more if we bring in one of these groups like a Dayenu Circle, which is a Jewish group that focuses on the environment, what can Federation do to support that group and help make it successful?
I wanted to ask you something, but I know that there's a Moishe pod, and I know that Chabad has started a young professional group downtown. Are there still opportunities in terms of building connections with that, say, right out of college to 30s crowd?
Yes, and we are via those two groups right now. So Moishe Pod, we have funded one of their gatherings. We help promote, and this is where I say more like the partnerships. I don't think we have the resources right now to be in charge of every single program, but I think it's more gathering, pointing people towards the other groups. Because again, when one group in this community gets lifted, we all get lifted.
And one other question, which again is not on the list, but I wanted to follow up, and that is one table. Has there been any discussion about one table or trying to get people in the Jewish community connected through Shabbat?
I'm so glad you asked that, because we are planning a Shabbat across Wake County, and we're getting at the details. And yes, so our plans, we're still working with it. We have a local Buddhist that we are working with to plan the menu, and we'll have some curated menus. We're working out details about possibly having one main location for people who don't feel comfortable going to someone else's houses, and then reaching out to everyone else who wants to host a Shabbat, and we will facilitate it anyway. We're looking into if we could get funding through One Table, or PJ has some funding opportunities. But yes, we are absolutely looking at a way to make that happen.
That sounds really, really exciting. So I am hoping that information will be coming out soon for the community about that. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel is important for our listeners to know about?
I would just say you belong. Like a lot of people say, how do I join? It's not a member of joining. You are part of this community. We are all part of this community. And there's no competition. The success of any one person or one organization or one community, within this greater community, lifts us all up. And, what can we do to help?
That's all just wonderful information to know. And Mindy Lawton, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
My next guest is Gena Brown. Gena's long association with the Federation includes her work with PJ Library and the Jewish Community Relations Council. Currently the Adult Engagement Manager, she is busy spending her time finding ways to attract adults, which includes a variety of different demographics, interests, and identities, by facilitating ways to enhance their participation in and with the Federation's programs and services. I'm here with Gena Brown, the Adult Engagement Manager for the Jewish Federation of Greater Raleigh. Gena, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So, even before we get into who you are and what you do at the Federation, I want to step back a little bit and ask you what brought you to Raleigh and the Raleigh area.
Well, like so many other people, I came here because my husband ended up with a job here. And in the beginning, we lived in Burlington, North Carolina, and I drove to Greensboro for a job, and he drove to Raleigh for a job. And then after a year, we moved to Raleigh.
Well, Burlington's not that far a commute, but it's still a pretty good drive on a daily basis there and back every day. So you started off with the Federation in some capacity, and then from there you moved into a position where you ran the PJ Library program for a while, and now you've stepped into this new position, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if you could, again, kind of talk about what has been your history and involvement with the Federation while you've been here in the Raleigh area.
So my history goes back probably almost 30 years. I was a special ed teacher at a year-round school for Wake County Public Schools. And at that time, I had some concerns about some things that were happening in my school. And I had reached out and spoken with Bob Goldwasser about those concerns. And the more we talked, he said, I think you would be helpful on the JCRC council. And so I ended up being the representative for the Jewish community to go to the calendaring committee meetings to make certain that the Jewish population community was represented when they did calendaring for schools. So that was my initial connection to the Jewish Federation here almost 30 years ago.
And just real quick, who is Bob Goldwasser for those who may not know?
Bob at the time was someone who was heading up the Jewish Relations Council, and he's a long-standing member of our community.
And so the main thing that got your attention or raised your concerns were as you said, the school calendar, that it basically did not take any kind of consideration for Jewish holidays or other events.
That was part of it, but there was also a strong contingency of fellowship for Christian athletes taking place at the schools, and I wanted to know what their standing was and what they could and could not do in that public space. And so that's where some of that started.
So you started off working with the JCRC. So how did your involvement with the Federation then lead to your position as heading up the PJ Library?
At some point in time, probably 3 years ago, someone who was on the JFS, Jewish Family Services section of the Federation, asked me if I would sit on the advisory board for Jewish Family Services. And so I entered on in that position. And while I was on a retreat that was being led by Phil Brodsky, our fearless leader for the Federation, I learned that there was a position open, and I had recently stepped away from the job that I had. And so I inquired about the PJ Library position.
So you're in this position now, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are the Federation Adult Engagement Manager.
Correct.
So how do you define adult for the people that you're dealing with, and how do you define engagement?
Adult, I think, is a little nebulous, and I think we are even grappling with what that means, because I handle adult engagement, but then there are aspects where someone is handling a more mature population. So technically adult would be obviously 18 or older, but I think in our case we're talking much more about people who have gained a fair amount of independence from their parental units. So I would say probably looking at mid 20s on up. And then as far as engagement goes, engagement happens in all kinds of different ways. And we've been expanding on that and looking at, does that mean depth? Does it mean breadth when we talk about engagement? And I think what we realize is it means both of these things. How often do we engage somebody within our community? And once we engage them, how often do we see them again?
What are some of the challenges that come with that, and what are some of the opportunities that come with that?
So challenges, I think I even found this in PJ Library. Wake County is very spread out, and the JCC, the Jewish Community Center campus, is in one location, and people don't always want to come this far for a program, and that's understood because they have families, they have commitments in the area where they live, and to drive to the Jewish Community Center is far for some of them. It doesn't fit into their daily lives. So a challenge is, how do we meet those people who are part of our community, Jewish, who want to be engaged but don't want to come for programming so far away? So that's a challenge. An opportunity, and I think this is the exciting part, an opportunity is, okay, what is it that those families, those individuals are looking for, and how do we take the show on the road and go to where they are? And we're figuring that out. We're making it happen.
So the idea is to meet people where they are, or to at least look at Wake County in terms of demographic clusters.
Exactly.
Someone coming from the southern part of Wake County, that is quite a drive. And then even if someone's driving in from, say, Wake Forest, that still can be quite a haul.
Right. So we're changing the way that we do things. I think very much like many of us are seeing in the Jewish movement all the way around, people aren't necessarily wanting to go to a brick and mortar location that's connected to a Jewish institution, but they still want that connection. And so we're realizing that we're going again to where those people are.
And it's the same thing a lot of the synagogues are struggling with too, because a lot of the synagogues now are meeting out in the community or doing programs in bars or restaurants or
exactly
common places.
Yep.
So let me ask another question following up on engagement. Has there been any discussion about engagement, but through the lens of Jewish values? In other words, how are Jewish values that make up a part of what the Federation does influencing the type of work that you all do?
It's not a question I've thought much about, to be honest. And I think it's important. I think when we are doing very specific programming, whether it's having a speaker come in or we're engaging with our PJ Library families, whatever the case might be, we're integrating the idea of Jewish values. And those things are always shaping what we do. We are also looking at the social aspect of it. And maybe part of that is going back to that whole Yiddish term, something that's hamisha, something that's creating that warmth of community, which I think is a Jewish value as well. So part of it's programming, part of it is creating that connection so people know that they have a community that they can rely on for simchas, happy things, but also during times of trouble like a death in the family.
And also just the value of welcoming the stranger. There are a lot of people who are not engaged in the Jewish community, and that's, again, I think, an opportunity as well.
Right. And I think that the Federation can often fill that gap that maybe synagogues do less of, because someone may feel that connection culturally, but not feel it religiously. And so they don't engage in a synagogue, but they might engage through the Federation.
So that leads me to my next question is, do you have a favorite story about, and again, I'm not asking you to reveal names or anything, but do you have a favorite story about people you've helped get connected to the Federation, or some kind of event where you felt like you've really made a difference in someone's life by connecting them to the Jewish community?
I feel like there are several, but one of the most recent ones that's coming to me is a little bit of it's part of it is sad, but I had a mom contact me recently, and she said that she lost her husband and that they had a child that was young, and then they had very young within a month, and then several who were a little bit older. And she was looking for that community. But as the conversation went on, what she was able to express was she didn't lose her husband through a divorce or a death. She had lost him through some mental health issues that were going on. And she's one of those people who's proximity wise, not close to where we are, but was still looking for that support and for her community. And it was exciting because I was able to connect her with several other families who are very welcoming and have children the same age. And when I reached out to them and I checked with her, how much can I disclose? I reached out to them and they said, by all means, please tell her we are here. We are happy to include her in what we are doing. And we look forward to meeting and engaging with her more. So that was a great example of a way that I was able to connect people.
That's a wonderful and really amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, are there specific new communities within the Greater Raleigh area you're trying to connect to? Have there been discussions about certain demographics which are traditionally less thought of in terms of engaging? Like, again, certain kinds of families or LGBTQ or other people that traditionally have not been a focus of people ensuring that they're part of the community?
Yes, definitely. You know that within my family, I have someone I love very much who's part of that genderqueer community. And it's interesting to see things through that person's lens. And that's been really helpful to me to make certain that I'm really seeking out that population if they're feeling marginalized. But I've also talked to some families over the last year who are part of biracial families. And they say that even in the PJ books, they weren't always seeing their families looking back at them through those books. So we've been working hard to look at what that looks like for them and how can we connect them. Because, and I also said, well, you're welcome to come to any of the things that we're doing. And they said, you know what, sometimes we want to come to a Jewish event where all the families look like us. And so that's another group that I think we've been looking for and reaching out to. I think another one, and PJ was amazing at this, PJ Library was amazing at this, families who have multiple religions in their family. So making them feel welcome and know that, yes, you are part of our community. We want you here. And it's okay that in your homes and in your lives, you celebrate your Judaism however it is you see fit. So that's another community I think that I specifically am looking to make certain feels a part of what we have to offer.
When you get up every morning, what excites you the most about your new position and, what you've been tasked to do?
I'm really excited about partnering with the different religious institutions that exist. I'm really excited about bringing down the silos that I think have been created over time for lots of reasons. Sometimes there have been hurt feelings. Sometimes it's proximity. Sometimes it's because someone built a relationship and then over time that person moved on and then the relationship was broken. Whatever that is, I want to make certain that we're working as an entire community. It's not just what the Federation has to offer, but if Purim is being done at the synagogues, there's no reason for us to duplicate a program. Let us go to those places and to be a support to them. So what excites me is making this community a whole community where we are all working together towards an end goal.
And I can't agree with you more. I usually end up my discussions by asking a question that's a little bit more open-ended. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel is important for our listeners to know about?
You know, I would say right now, we've had new leadership for a couple of years, and that's about how long I've been here as well. And I think there's a lot of amazing change that is happening in the Federation as a whole. And there are a lot of growing pains. And I think I would like to see people who aren't part of the Federation to understand that what we are trying to do and what I believe is going to happen is that we're going to grow. We're going to make the Federation much, much better than it's ever been before. But it's going to take some patience from everybody. And I ask for that grace for us to be able to make our community better.
Any new initiatives or program ideas that have been batted around that you're kind of excited about that you wouldn't mind giving a little hint about?
Actually, I met with the Jewish business leaders recently, which is maybe a misnomer because I think it's Jews with jobs. And maybe we need to include Jews who don't have jobs too. But they're looking at some interesting things related to AI. And they've been looking at how that relates morally and ethically and how it impacts our lives. So that's something that they're working on that I think is kind of cool. And it's not something that I would have necessarily been engaged in my past life.
Yeah, it's certainly a big topic of discussion right now, and everyone's seeming to roll out some aspect of artificial intelligence, whether it's in web browsing or obviously people are using it to write things, press releases, term papers, some things that they should be able to use it for, some things that maybe they shouldn't, but that's for another discussion for another day. Gena, I can't thank you enough for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you for inviting me, and I really enjoyed it, and it was a lot less scary than I thought it was going to be.
I need to make sure that I let everyone know that who's about to come on to the podcast. So I'll let them know that, well, Gena said it's not nearly as scary as you thought it would be.
And I'm happy to share that with them too.
Thank you for listening to Shalom Greater Raleigh. The show is hosted and edited by yours truly, BJ Davis. The show's producer is Jory Slodky. The title graphic was created by Eileen Malott, and the Federation's CEO is Phil Brodsky. Also, a big shout out to Raleigh Jewish music phenomenon Dan Nichols for the generous use of his music. We'd also like to thank our sponsors Bizcom Global and Campbell Orthodontics. The content of this program was accurate as of the day it was recorded. For up-to-date information about programs, visit shalomraleigh.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We welcome your questions, suggestions, and comments, so send us an email at info@shalomraleigh.org. That's info@shalomraleigh.org. Shalom Greater Raleigh is a production of the Jewish Federation of Greater Raleigh.